Episode 13 begins late at night at Penguin Park. It seemed like a quiet night at first, or so that's the case. Then suddenly, a force of some kind is coming closer and closer to the penguin slide at Penguin Park. And of course, nobody knows it yet, but something weird is going on there. The very next morning at the Avalon residence, in the dining room, we have Tori, who's Sakura's brother. He was the first to sit at the table, while Aiden, who's Tori and Sakura's father, just told Tori that he's making Sakura's lunch that day. And why is that? Because he just told Tori that Sakura and her classmates are going on their field trip to the zoo. So Tori was asked by his father, and of course Sakura's father as well, if he would mind setting up the table, and Tori agrees. But before he could do so, it catches the attention of a news reporter on the TV in the living room. Then the reporter said that there was something weird going on with the penguin slide back at Penguin Park earlier on that night, and nobody knows who did it and why. When Tori saw that report and what had happened at Penguin Park, he couldn't help but wonder what is going on there. He had no idea what to make of it. So when Sakura shows up minutes later to the dining room, she said good morning to her father Aiden and of course her brother Tori. So Tori was the first to ask his sister, "You're going to the zoo, right?" And then he made a cruel attempt at humor at her, which Sakura is not amused of. And then her father just brought Sakura's lunch. Luckily, he made it, and so Sakura thanked her father for it. So Sakura hugs her father, and then her brother made the case by having a sarcastic remark to say, word has it that you're the King Kong of Penguin Park last night. And Sakura says, "What do you mean?" And her brother says, "Well, see for yourself." And what Sakura saw on TV was unbelievable. The same penguin slide that was reported on the news. The same report that Tori saw on TV earlier. But that's not all. Not only is the king penguin slide upside down, but the reporter also said that something or someone ripped it from below. So it's now time for Sakura to leave to join her classmates for their trip to the zoo. So while Sakura was on her way to join her classmates, she couldn't help but think to herself, what's going on there at Penguin Park? Why would anybody rip up the penguin slide from below and turn it upside down? And then she thinks to herself that that was impossible and there's no way that anybody could lift up the slide to turn it upside down the way it did. Something weird's going on, and Sakura has no idea what to make of it or why. But then suddenly she hears the voice of Julian, who's her brother's best friend, showing up on his bicycle. The first thing that Julian did was to say hello to Sakura and then ask, "Didn't you hear about the penguin slide there at Penguin Park? It's all over the news." So both Julian and Sakura stopped by at Penguin Park, and there they saw the same penguin slide that Sakura saw on TV before she left her house, and there are news crews there. I forgot to mention that Julian had told Sakura that he has to see it for himself on his way to school, and now he did. So, on his way to school, that's when Sakura asked Julian a question. Who would do this such a thing to this King Penguin slide? Although Julian said that he isn't sure of it, but something weird is going on, he said. Then Julian was told by Sakura that she has some good news, that she and her classmates are going on a field trip. Well, even Julian agrees with Sakura and said that how lucky of her that she actually joined up with her classmates that day. Well, good news for Sakura, she makes it to her school to join up with her friends. But what she didn't realize is that their trip to the zoo turns out to be anything but normal. So meanwhile at the zoo, Mr. Torada, who was there with his classmates, he made an assurance. He said that whatever's going on at the Penguin Park poses no danger. And the reporter says that the penguin slide that was turned upside down was not damaged in any way. So he told his classmates that in the meantime they got some reports to do. So what Mr. Torada did next is that he started passing cameras to each of the classmates. He says, "Well, you know your assignments." Then Mr. Torada said, "Oh, don't lose those cameras." So the class heads off. So Sakura was with her friends, Madison, Chelsea, Nikki, and Rita, and as Chelsea hands Madison the camera, she made a suggestion. She said that since Madison knows more about cameras, then she said that Madison should be the one to take some pictures, and Madison agrees. So Chelsea, Nikki, and Rita are starting talking about what's going on with the penguin slide at Penguin Park that night, and what if something weird is going on. Well, Rita said in her case that whatever's going on there, then Rita says in her case it might be still around in the zoo somewhere. Nikki, who agrees with Rita, she makes her case that she must have suspected that it might be a ghost or something, the one that's responsible for what has happened at Penguin Park. Now, Chelsea, who agrees with both Nikki and Rita, she suggests that if they found the ghost themselves, then they can get an A on their report. Madison agrees with Chelsea's idea. So then, long story short, Sakura says, "Hey, why don't we take some pictures of those elephants over there?" The girls agreed, and then they head off. So the girls went ahead and took a look at the elephants, both the mother and his baby, in a cage together. So Madison went ahead and took some pictures of the elephants. As for the boys, including Lee and Zachary, they went to the sloth cage. So after looking at it and how fascinating it looks, that's when Lee wants to know from Zachary, "This is what we want to study for our report?" "That's right," Zachary said. Lee was going to take a picture of the sloth at first, but then he got really annoyed because, according to what Lee says in his case, the sloth hasn't even moved an inch, not since when they arrived. Zachary says, "Oh, don't worry about it. You just have to be patient, that's all." And then he asked Lee a question. "Did you know that sloths are very intelligent creatures?" So back with Sakura and her friends, Madison, Chelsea, Nikki, and Rita, they were busy watching elephants. Now you can tell that Sakura's in awe. As for her best friend Madison, she does what she knows best, taking pictures of the elephants, both the mother and its baby. Then Chelsea asked a question to make a suggestion. She says, "Would it be great if the elephants can help us demonstrate to test the strength of maybe doing tug of war or something?" But then suddenly, some kind of explosion is coming from inside the zoo. At first, Sakura thinks nothing of it, but she knows there's something weird going on. So Madison says, "Wow, that's quite an explosion." So long story short, after everything is calmed down, the rest of the class just does the tug of war with the elephants. So Sakura wants to know from her best friend Madison, could it be that it might be the cause of a you know what that might be involved? Sakura said that she isn't sure of it. Madison, who's Sakura's best friend, as always being supportive as she is, just asked the question, "Why don't you ask Hiro about it?" So, by the time that Sakura looks in her backpack, there's Kiro, and he just explained to her why he's sneaking away in her backpack. So, long story short, after that short lived distraction, that's when Nikki says, "Gee, is it lunchtime already?" "Yeah, speaking of which, I'm getting hungry," Sakura says. So Nikki says, "Okay, we'll meet up later." And so after that, both Sakura and Madison ran off. So back with Madison and Sakura, who found Kiro in Sakura's backpack, you can tell that Sakura's upset. She told Kiro, "I thought I told you. We made a deal for you to stay at home." "Sorry, Sakura," Kiro said, "but I just couldn't resist the smell of your dad's lunch." So Sakura, who forgives Kiro and says, "Well, on the other hand, I'm glad that you're here today because I may be sensing a you know what." Then Kiro asked the question, "Couldn't we just eat first?" "We don't have time for that right now," Sakura says. "Lunch will have to wait." "I agree," Madison says. "There are more things that are important than eating." And of course, she's not kidding. Back with Lee and Zachary, they at long last was about to take this lost picture, but then an explosion startled them. Back with Sakura and Madison, they heard the exact same explosion as they did before when they were with Rita, Chelsea, and Nikki. It was just like Sakura had suspected. But Kiro asked a question. He says that even if that was the case, what makes you suspect that? Then the three of them, Madison, Kiro, and Sakura, saw a frightened penguin that just passed them by. Then Madison has her own suspicion that maybe the penguin cage just broke on its own. Well, even if that was so, Kira said to Madison, penguins just don't escape on their own unless, yep, you guessed it, it is definitely the work of a you know what. So back with Sakura and Madison, the next time they heard an explosion, they started to investigate. So that's what they did. Madison and Sakura were running one way while the people who evacuated ran in the other direction. Then they ran into Chelsea and Nikki. So Chelsea says, "Hey, you guys are running the wrong way." "We'll meet you guys there," Madison suggested. And so both Madison and Sakura ran off. Back with Lee, he suspected the exact same thing as Sakura did. After giving Zachary the camera, he says, "You take care of the pictures." And so he ran off. So back with Madison and Sakura were busy running. That's when luckily everybody evacuated because as Kira says in his case that there's no way that Sakura could use her magic around with people being present. Sakura and Madison knew that they were onto something and suspected that the power cord is somewhere nearby. But before they can get on their way, that's when they saw a herd of zebras that are passing them by. Once all of the zebras are evacuated, that's when Sakura and Madison heard an explosion. And they thought, wow, that's one smart cloud card. And then they heard another explosion to where the elephant cage is. So both Madison and Sakura head to the cage to where all the elephants were. And that's when they saw it. And what happened next was unbelievable. There are many explosions that are happening all over the elephant cage, and both the mother and its child were terrified. Anyway, Sakura and Madison and Carol were watching it happen, and Sakura couldn't help but wonder what kind of a cloud card would frighten the elephants like that. Well, Kiro says in his case that whatever's doing it is pretty strong and is capable of doing it. Back with the elephants, while the mother elephant's trying its best to protect its child, that's when what happened next is unbelievable. Something or someone has lifted the mother elephant right up into the air. Sakura was terrified and was worried of what's going to happen to it. Sakura knew that there was no time to lose, so she transforms the cloud key into a cloud staff, just like she normally does. And what she did next is that she summoned the windy card to save the mother elephant, and good thing it did. Well, good news, the mother elephant, thanks to the Wendy car's form, and manages to land it safe on the ground and intact. And its baby was very happy to see that its mother is safe. Even Sakura Madison was glad to see what had happened. But Sakura got upset because the mother elephant could have gotten hurt, or something even worse. Then Madison, as always, has a hunch. She says, "You know what I was thinking? This happens the exact same way. It's the same thing that happened back at Penguin Park with the Penguin Slide." Then Kiro, who agrees with Madison, he says, "If you're thinking that I'm thinking, then yes, that might be the case. It's the power card." So Kiro, as always, gave some advice to Sakura. He says, "Listen, I have a plan. All you have to do is find a way to overpower it somehow." So Sakura was asking Kiro if he was sure of it. Not only did Kiro say that he's sure, but he tells her that you better hurry because something's happening to the elephant again. And wouldn't you know it, it did the exact same thing to the mother elephant, just like it did before. So Kiro was proven right. So Sakura, who saw it happen, she says, "Enough is enough. You've shown your skills, so what do you say we put our strengths to the test?" So Madison, who has a conversation with Kiro, she says, "I know Sakura's stronger, but what is going on here?" "Well, I can tell you that," Kiro says. "The only power's weakness is its own pride. It's good for what it does." So Sakura says, "Put that elephant down right this minute." It did. So once again, the mother elephant is safe, and now it's coming towards Sakura. So Sakura uses the jump card to get out of its way. As for Madison, good news, she hides behind the tree, but the power's explosion has just cut the tree in half. But luckily for Madison, she moved out of the way and then the tree collapsed. So Carol told Sakura in his case that I think you got his attention. Well, for your sake, you better be right, Sakura said. But then Carol shouted, "Watch out!" And so at the last minute, Sakura turned and ran off. So when eventually Madison runs to catch up with her, that's when they both ran off at once. Then Sakura told Carol that there's no way I could beat the power card by running away like that. No, Carol says, but all you have to do is just name a contest. And so she did. So Sakura says, that's it, tug of war. So after she said it, that's when she and Madison stopped running. But when they looked behind them over their shoulder, there they saw it, the power chords form. So the Powers form was a girl about 3 feet tall in height, of course. So Sakura says, wait a minute, that's the Powers form? Madison was very impressed with the outfit that the power form's wearing. Well, true, it is impressive, Carol says, but Power's form is not as innocent as it looks. So, long story short, after the Powers form had taken the rope, she grabbed one end, and then Sakura's on the other end. So, what the Power form is doing is that she's challenging Sakura to a tug of war match. So, both Sakura and the Powers form began pulling each other. So Sakura says, use the windy card. I'm kind of held up at the moment, Sakura says. So Sakura in the power form continues to pull and pull and pull, and then finally, guess who decided to lend a hand? Or a trunk to coin a phrase. It's the mother elephant. So now with the help of the mother elephant, both the mother elephant and Sakura continues to pull and pull and pull, and then up in a tree was Lee. He's watching it happen. Like I said, there's Lee. He's up in the tree. He watched the tug of war match going on between Sakura, the mother elephant, and the Powers Forum. And he pleaded himself a case to say that there's no way Sakura, even with the elephant's help, is going to pull it off. So he himself has a plan. He's going to use the time card. And so he did. Now that the time is frozen in place, all he did was to jump off the tree, go to the power card's form to take the rope away from her. Then he jumps back into the tree and unfroze the time with the exact same card. So, back with Sakura and the mother elephant, well, guess what? The power card's form is defeated. They won the tug of war match. But they had no idea that they didn't do it alone. They did it with a little help from Lee and his time card. Sakura couldn't believe it, and neither did her best friend and Kiro, that she actually pulled it off. Sakura, that is. And of course, she owed it all to the mother elephant who helped out on the way. So she thanked the mother elephant for her help. The last thing that Sakura did was that she caught the power card while it's still on the ground. So she did. So that makes number 14 on the list. The power card, that is. So when Madison runs to catch up with Sakura, Sakura looked at her and she says, hey, my magic's getting stronger by the moment. See, Madison says, I told you, you are a card captor after all. Well, up in the tree, Lee pleads his case to say, well, that may be true, but you're going to have a lot more strength than that. And so he runs off. So you know what this means. Sakura, now with the power card has been caught, there's still one little business that she needs to take care of. So you know what this means. She'll have to go by at Penguin Park. So meanwhile at Penguin Park the very next day, now that Sakura has gotten the penguin slide back to its proper place, right side up that is, she went to catch up with Madison who just took her picture. And then Sakura wants to know if those were the pictures that she had just taken recently back at the zoo. And Madison said that they are. But Sakura's getting worried because she suspected that her best friend may show a picture of Sakura herself in that King Penguin slide when Sakura was using the power card. So Sakura says, please do me a favor, don't show that picture to anyone, okay? Okay, Madison says, I won't. And then minutes later, Julian, who's Sakura's brother's best friend, shows up on his bicycle to say hello to Sakura and Madison. And then the wind by accident just blew Madison's picture to Julian. after Julian asked if Sakura and Madison had fun at the zoo just recently. Then Julian looks at the picture very carefully that Madison took recently at Penguin Park. So Julian, after he looks at the picture, he's asking Sakura and Madison, would you mind explaining what is going on here? But Sakura hesitated, and then Madison says, well, I got it from my computer just recently. Well, I kind of figured that, Julian says, because Madison didn't want Julian to know what's really going on at Penguin Park. Then Julian made a compliment to Madison. So you know what this means. Sakura now has 14 cloud cars and Lee has only one. But there's still a lot to go. So that ends episode 13.